Hey you guys, what's up? This is Morgan from MorganLett Insights and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing Taurus season 2020. What does that mean? What you can expect? What we'll typically see as a collective? How you may experience this on an individual level? And so on and so on. So Taurus season officially kicks off on April 19th, which for my Eastern Hemisphere folks is going to be on Sunday. Just depends on where you live. So Taurus season kicks off on April 19th around 10:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is a new 4-week cycle. So the sun changes signs every 4 weeks in astrology in terms of the 12-week zodiac. And so Taurus is represented by the second sign of the zodiac. So when we think about the energy of Taurus in response to its element, its position, how it expresses and responds to external and internal stimuli, all of those different characteristics that we would attribute to Taurus is going to be kind of discussed and fleshed out in this video. But so Taurus is an earth sign. So Taurus is not only an earth sign, but Taurus is also a fixed earth sign. So anytime we're dealing with a fixed earth energy, we're going to be dealing with our will. Like we're going back to our primal instincts where it's all about security and survival and material possession and physical attributes of our personality. Because when we're dealing with Taurus, we're dealing with the mantra I have. What do I have? What makes me feel safe? What do I possess? And the first 6 wheels of the zodiac is all about the self. We're really focusing on making sure that we feel secure as an individual. So again, when we get to Libra, we can start to really focus on those external relationships. So coming out of Aries season, there's a lot of impulse. There's a lot of desire. There's a lot of drives. There's a lot of excess. And so Taurus is coming in and really kind of skimming all of that excess off the surface. And it's going to happen very quick. One, we have the Taurus new moon coming in on April 22nd, which is really going to bring illumination to some of those internal desires towards those scarcity-based complexes and abundance-based complexes, and really just choosing a side, like really coming into understanding of you can't have both. You can't be poor and you can't be rich. Either you are abundant or you're not. And your abundance is not determined by your economic value or the extent of your investment portfolio. Abundance for you is going to be about gratitude and receptivity and love and nurturance. All of those things are what we are being encouraged to really evaluate right now with all of the things that are taking place in the world. But with Taurus season coming up, we're kind of having to be forced to pay attention to the economic backdrop. What's happening on a physical level. We see what's happening in terms of like the fire, the excitement, the changes. But what's happening on a very structural level is what Taurus season is really bringing up to the surface. And the new moon on April 22nd is really giving us an inside job of how we relate to abundance. And if there are anything that is left over from the Aries new moon, right, that you really want to implement. So say you had an idea or you're really starting on this new project and you're like, Morgan, what about now? Now Taurus is taking what is realistic, what is pragmatic, what can actually be achieved, and is starting to build a structure around that. So whatever ideas, whatever issues that you started to see in Aries season are not going to go away. If anything, they might become more obvious because Taurus is all about progression, but the progression that Taurus brings is nothing like the progression that Aries brings, where Aries just darts ahead. Taurus is like, oh no, I need the facts, I need the blueprint. Did somebody plan out the details? How much does this cost? Like Taurus is all about the logistics. And as much as that might seem like we're going backwards, like we're going back into this patriarchal masculine way, you know, the imbalance in the universe in terms of masculine and feminine energies, that's not what's happening. What's happening is we're realizing that our economic structure is essential to our foundation as a people. And this is really encouraging us to sit with it on how we interpret that for ourselves. Am I operating from a scarcity-based mindset, or am I operating out of abundance? What are my values? What is my truth? And a lot of this is coming from this belief that we are worth as much as we have. And this Taurus season is not going to be anything like that. It's not the same like in the past where we're like, okay, I'm ready to buy a new car. Typically, astrologers like, Taurus season, it's a great time to get a new car, great time to buy a house, great time to invest your money. This Taurus season is different, and it's really asking us to reflect on, okay, well, I have this, I have that, and I have that. I still feel empty. So that's a clue that material possessions are not what fulfills us, and we know that as human beings, but this energy is really forcing us to embody that, to make that a living practice, to step outside of material possessions in order to feel grateful, not having to physically and tangibly see and touch something for it to be real. That is where this paradigm shift is really coming, and Uranus is going to be at the forefront of that when it conjuncts off with the sun in Taurus on April 26th at 6 degrees. So it's a huge moment in the cosmos for us, and it's evolving. It's an evolutionary thing, and so pay attention to a lot of the trends that we were starting to see last year, like in our finances, like what happened during Taurus season last year that may give some clues to where we are now. I always like posing that question and really just encouraging you to document how you on an individual are affected by these planetary transits, because I can tell you collectively all day, but you're the one in your everyday life living out these transits. And so pay attention, because these themes are repetitive and they build on one another. So you might start to see that a lot of the things that you were dealing with at this same time 2 years ago are now being addressed right now. Like, for instance, student debt. We knew, a lot of people knew, like, student debt was rising. It was an issue, but now this pandemic has brought the magnitude of student debt to the awareness. And so it seems like we're in this bigger hole, but this hole was actually here 3 years ago. You get what I'm saying? So it's a realization process. And so anytime we deal with Uranus, it's wanting to bring progression, but with it being in a fixed sign like Taurus, this is something that is a layer process. We're moving structure by structure by structure. So my perspective in terms of like the pandemic is that a lot of the changes that we're going to be implementing in terms of going back to normalcy are going to be it's going to have to be gradual. It's going to have to be systematic, and it's going to have to make logistic sense. It's going to have to be factual, and that has nothing to do with politics. That's just the energy that we're in. It has to be practical. We saw what happens when we react impulsively in Aries season. Shit hits the fan. So this Taurus season, we're going to be progressing on the hard notes lessons that we learned in Aries season. So another thing we're going to be seeing during this Taurus season is Mercury is going to be making 2 transits, not 1. On April 27th, Mercury is going to be leaving Aries and moving into Taurus. So what I'm really sensing for this transit is that we are going to be moving away from like the impulsive response, fight or flight based thinking, and moving into a more logical, more practical, again, more pragmatic way of responding to the external circumstances. So when it comes to our communication, when it comes to our messaging, when it comes to how we are receiving and sending out information, all of that is going to be more well thought out. A lot of the messaging and just the way that the information has been presented to us on a collective level throughout Aries season has been very jumbled, has been very rushed, has been very conflicting. It's very scattered in terms of one thing it's this and the next thing it's that. You don't really have any clarity or just clear-cut facts when we were dealing with the Mercury and Aries transit. So Mercury in Taurus is going to bring in more stability. It's going to be more based upon trust and reliability, rather than it is going to be on speed and spontaneity. So who sounds the most interesting? Who has the most catchphrases? Who has the most captivating headline? All of that me energy surrounding Mercury and Aries is starting to really drift into something that is mundane, where we're starting to see like, okay, it's too much going on. And so a lot of people will naturally tune out, stop watching the news, stop reading articles, kind of disconnecting from the information because it is so overwhelming and it is so bam, 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 bam in your face. So Mercury in Taurus really calms that down. Now, the only drawback to this transit is that people are going to be extremely stubborn. So with Uranus in Taurus, with the Sun in Taurus, and now with Mercury joining the Sun in Uranus, this is going to bring willpower to our thoughts and to our communication. So people are going to, instead of being impulsive and just randomly throwing out random facts, I mean, when I say random facts, people are going to be clinging to their ideas. So now it's going to be, my system is better than your system, or I have better results than your results. So we don't want to move away from the sense of eagerness that comes from Aries, but we also want to integrate and build on that eagerness so we can actually gain traction. We want to actually make progress. So when it comes to research, like finding a cure for the coronavirus and things like that, we're not going to make any progress if we keep doing it from this impulse reaction based thinking. It has to be structured, it has to be systemized. There needs to be some sort of official governance when it comes to the research and the testing and all of this information that is being passed to us, the consumers, from the powers in position. So Mercury in Taurus is going to be important in regards to that. Now I'm going to be sharing individual videos for each transit, so I kind of want to speed through this so this video does not end up being 50 minutes long. So Mercury will then move into Gemini on May 11th, and this is going to be big because Mercury will be teaming up with Venus in Gemini. And remember, Venus is going to be stationing retrograde on May 13th. So this is the first retrograde transit with Venus since 2018, since October of 2018, where we had that Venus retrograde through Scorpio in Libra. So this Venus retrograde in terms of Taurus season is really encouraging us to think back to a lot of our traditions, a lot of the beliefs and the patterns that have been implemented us from our parents, from our upbringing, from society, telling us that there's this one way of doing love, or there's only one pattern like marriage. Marriage is the only option, and if you're not married, your love is not real. All of those different belief systems are going to be fleshed out, y'all, when it comes to Venus and Gemini. So a lot of people are going to, one, either figure out that you don't actually like your partner. Two, you and your partner have some communication issues that you can work through. Or three, you actually share a lot in common with your partner, and this is an opportunity for you to really rebuild and reconnect and remind yourself on why you were brought together in the first place. But for those people in those first two groups, I want you to pay close attention to where Gemini falls in your chart and where Gemini falls in your partner's chart, because that's going to give you some key insights into how this transit is going to play out with you. But in regards to Taurus season, this is really just making you think about what even instilled those belief systems in the first place. Like, what made you think that love is more important than friendship, or friendship is more important than love, or whatever is coming up for you in your paradigm? What actually instilled those values? Like, where does that come from? Like, who is to say that that is the truth? You're questioning things, and this is a period of curiosity in terms of your relationship. So be curious during this Taurus season, and pay attention, and really just focus on figuring out what you want, what your values are, what your principles are, what your no's and your yeses are. That way, when it comes to communicating and cooperating with others during this transit, you are coming from a clear place. You're not trying to figure it out. So now you're confusing more people. So just really getting clear on your own values, your own expectations, your own intentions, your own principles, and what you believe in. Your ethics, your code of ethics really is going to be coming up for a lot of people with this Venus in retrograde transit starting during Taurus season, even though it will take us into Gemini season. Lastly, some things I wanted to talk about, two more things, is retrograde season, annual retrograde season. So annual retrograde season is going to be our outer planets, the planets who go retrograde every year, disregarding Mercury. Mercury tends to go retrograde at least 2 or 3 times a year. So our annual retrogrades every year are going to be Jupiter, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn. So right now in Taurus season, we are starting off the annual retrograde season with Pluto starting on April 25th. Pluto would be stationing retrograde in Capricorn. This transit is going to be a continuation of the energies that we're already seeing right now. They're just regressing. So we may see a backlapse in coronavirus cases where we start to see that we're at the peak and then all of a sudden it trickles backwards again. So just be mindful, be patient, and understanding that this energy is playing out all year until November with that last conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto. So be patient with that. Jupiter is going to be stationing retrograde in Capricorn on May 14th. So this is, again, going to be a reoccurring theme that we are continuing to see play out. So pay attention to the opportunities in terms of your career and your professions and your long-term goals that are just not working for you anymore. Be mindful of what is being prepared to be shed, and find ways to work through that. If you do feel like some opportunities have been lost due to the external changes dealing with our universe right now, know that you are not alone, and really find ways to call into your inner strength, and also maybe thinking about ways that you can see this as not beneficial, because loss is never beautiful, right? Who wants to lose something or someone that we love? But finding gratitude within this is going to be key for this retrograde season, since it's so intense with the Pluto and Jupiter aspects for the rest of the year. And then we have Saturn. Saturn is going to be stationing retrograde in Aquarius on May 11th. And this is interesting just because Saturn is in the beginning of its Aquarius transit. It's going to regress back into Capricorn for a couple of months before it fully stations direct in Aquarius at the end of the year. So just pay attention to what is kind of coming up in the beginning of the transit, and then don't be alarmed when you start to feel like old lessons are coming up again, especially for my millennials or for those who are walking into the energy of their Saturn return in Aquarius, especially for those who have Saturn in like the first 3 or 4 degrees of Aquarius. You're really feeling this. So just be patient with yourself. Understand that just because old lessons are repeating, they are being lessons. We learn the same thing over and over and over and over again until we finally learn how to apply it. And even when we learn how to apply the lesson, it doesn't mean that it's not going to come back again. You cannot create or destroy energy, y'all. It can only be renewed. So just remember that there is some truth and some science. So don't be alarmed if you feel like old habits or themes are coming back. Just embrace it and understand that you've already kind of walked through this in some form or fashion. It doesn't have to be the literal, example of what you've already been through, but there is some sort of resources or tools, or like I call our arsenal, our spiritual arsenal, that we have access to instantly to move through any external or internal blockage. So don't be alarmed. I'm telling y'all now, old energies are going to repeat itself. And it's just not exes. Everybody want to talk about your ex during retrograde season. I feel like your ex is coming back all year. That's me, but so it's not just about your exes. It's literally anything. You could be triggered by a memory, a smell, a sound, anything that really deals with a lot of it too is coming from childhood. A lot of us are born into scarcity. It doesn't matter if your parents are rich, okay, wealthy. Some form of our primitive nature is ingrained to be resourceful, right? To survive. And so we are having to play that out again and again and again in all of these different stories, which are timelines and narratives in our lives. And so paying attention to those narratives, paying attention to the stories that you repeat over and over again, just listen to what you tell your friends. Like, how many times have you had the same conversation with your best friend? That answers your own question. Or how many times have you asked advice for about the same thing? That answers your own question. And so with Taurus season being all about constancy, like a lot of people are going to be driven by this aspect of routine, which is essential. But at the same time, routine can actually be limiting. So it comes from where we have to take, again, energy evolves. We have to take those lessons that were applied and really brought up from the Aries and Libra lunar cycle and finding that perfect balance, knowing when you're being a perfectionist and when you're being efficient. That is going to be the key for this Taurus season, is knowing when we are being too rigorous and too structured and too limiting, and we're getting too, bogged down, like in chains by the facts, or are we just being realistic? Or, you know what I'm saying? So finding that perfect medium for you is going to be essential in establishing routines, not establishing routines that are locked in, that don't create flexibility. Always leave flexibility in your schedule for spirit to show up. But also understand that when you have too much time and vacancy, that's when those temptations of the past really start to come in and create disruption. So finding that perfect balance between flexibility and comfort and rest. Pay attention to addictions like with food and drugs and sex and anything that makes you lazy. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It can be your phone. It can be TV. It can be the internet. It can be whatever you are doing that is becoming indulgent to the point it is distracting you from the core values that you have set for yourself based on the intentions of your soul. That is when it becomes a problem. So listen to your gut. Don't talk yourself out of things. I think a lot of people are utilizing this period as a crutch. And I understand that coping mechanisms are unique and everyone is in their own journey. But I'm not going to sit here and pacify you and say that it's okay to be self-destructive. Okay, I'm not gonna give you that message, but I am gonna say do what makes you feel good, but understand there's a consequence to every decision. Whether you deem it right or wrong, there is something that is going to happen because you made that choice. So choose wisely, ground down, stop living in this scarcity complex, and really move into the true abundance that's living within you. So I love you guys. Like and subscribe. If you're interested, make sure that you are becoming a member. All of the information is in the links below. I'm not going through that whole breakdown. So I love you. Peace.